"What the hell?" Ben whispered, his voice barely audible. His heart raced as he stepped closer, cautiously, to the dryer. He could still see Mrs. Gable's face in the glass, though it was now gone, leaving only a faint, lingering impression. A chill ran down his spine, and the hair on his neck stood up. Something was terribly wrong. Lisa stepped back, her hands trembling as she wiped her palms on her pants. "We need to call someone. This is insane." Ben nodded, still, unable to tear his eyes away from the machine. "I'll call a repairman. I don't care what it costs. We need to get this checked out." The repairman's revelation the next day: they called a local appliance repairman. A man in his late 50s with tired eyes and calloused hands. He showed up promptly, his face immediately faltering as he saw the dryer in the kitchen. That was an old model," the repairman murmured, his voice tinged with a strange unease. "They don't make these anymore, haven't for decades." Ben and Lisa exchanged confused glances. "It's practically new," Lisa said, motioning to the dryer. "It came with the house when we moved in. Why? What's wrong with it? The VR?" Repairman hesitated before stepping closer, inspecting the gleaming surface of the dryer with a careful hand. "I've seen one of these before," he muttered under his breath. "Years ago, when I worked for Appliance Emporium. There was an incident, a recall, but not an official one." Lisa's heart began to race. "An incident? What do you mean?" He looked around, his face pale as he leaned closer to Ben. "People said strange things about these dryers," he whispered, voice dropping to almost a whisper. "That they didn't just dry clothes. They took things. People. It wasn't just the machines. They were linked to something darker, something alive. The company tried to cover it up, but the store burned down not long after." Ben could hardly believe what he was hearing. "What are you saying? This thing is possessed?" The repairman glanced nervously at the machine. "It's not just a dryer. It's a gateway, a prison for whatever it's taken. And now, it wants more." The words hit Ben like a punch to the gut. The repairman's eyes widened as he stepped back, fear creeping up his spine. "If you're smart, you'll get rid of it. Unplug it. Don't let it take anyone else." Ben reached for the plug. But before he could even grab it, the dryer came to life. The hum returned, louder, vibrating the very air around them. The repairman stepped back in terror, his face turning ashen. "Unplug it! Now!" Ben lunged for the plug, but it wouldn't budge. The hum became an agonizing roar as the dryer spun to life faster and faster. The walls of the kitchen seemed to bend and warp under the pressure. The air grew thick, suffocating. Then the voices began. At first they were faint, whispers, but they grew louder, overlapping in a symphony of agony. People's voices, screams, pleas for help, desperate calls for release. Lisa could swear she heard her name, soft and menacing, being whispered by the dryer. Her blood ran cold. The repairman backed away, his eyes wide with panic. "It's not a machine anymore," he cried out. "It's a trap. And now, it's coming for us." Before anyone could react, the dryer door burst open, unleashing a blast of frigid air that smelled of lavender and decay. Something dark and shapeless emerged, its form twisting and shifting as it reached for them. The shadows seemed to have a life of their own, tendrils snaking across the floor. The repairman screamed as the shadows wrapped around him, pulling him toward the dryer. His body twisted unnaturally as the machine's drum began to spin, the voices of the lost growing louder. "Run!" Ben shouted, grabbing Lisa's hand. They bolted for the door, leaving everything behind. Their belongings, their dreams, their safety. The next chapter. Months later, the house was sold again. The dryer, gleaming innocently in the kitchen, waited for its next victim. And in the dead of night, when the couple, Ilara and Liam, were deep in slumber, the hum began once more.